Which crazy theory can you prove? The treatments for supposedly incurable diseases like cancer and Alzheimer's actually exist and the government just doesn't want you to find out. I'm a professor at an elite university and we're actually told to keep our major discoveries private because it needs to get approved by government officials. I've seen so many of my colleagues make a breakthrough discovery that would make them win a Nobel Prize, but were forced to hide their research in a private database. Only people who need to know have access to them, except for the elite who can pay for access. I've tested out a few myself. You'd never expect that the things we take for granted could be the secret cure to our issues. When I was going through the piles of research, which included things like curing diabetes or a climate change quick fix, I found a paper on mushrooms. I thought they meant the drug type, but it turns out mushrooms are more efficient than we thought. They had studies of using mushrooms on rich students who got into fancy schools by parent bribes to make them have the drive to be a good student. It was on microdosing functional mushrooms. Instead of getting insanely high on mushrooms and seeing shadow figures, these mushrooms actually help you be an academic weapon. They have essential nutrients and rewire your brain to change the amount of brain power you use and make you less likely to get sick. They highlight their finding as the next big thing to help at-risk students and help people take advantage of their full potential. As for the study itself, it said that the mushrooms used were chaga mushrooms and lion's mane. They were meant to be mixed with caffeine so that the mind could enter a focus mode and have heightened cognitive abilities. This is because chaga mushrooms protect your brain cells and improve immune function. Lion's mane boosts cognitive function and memory, and caffeine improves concentration and raises alertness. When used together, these ingredients can enhance your ability to focus, remember things, and think clearly, which means a person's productivity would shoot up by 100%. I was obsessed with this idea because I was extremely behind on my work. I was going to look for lion's mane and chaga mushrooms to mix into a cup of coffee, but I found a flow state mushroom coffee that already had the same ingredients. The next day, I brewed the mushroom coffee and got to work. Usually, I have to force myself to do the work because I need to survive, but when I drank it, I felt my mind realign. I was about to grade 150 papers in just 2 hours, and it felt oddly calming. Usually, I procrastinate a lot because everything else seemed more interesting than seeing a student put a frowny face on a question they didn't understand, so I just couldn't concentrate. By the time I got to the university, I immediately felt ready to start the day with new energy and focus. As I was teaching, I sped through my lessons, and I didn't have to deal with annoying students asking extra questions because they understood everything. Some of my classes even ended early. Then, I had to grade my stack of papers. I would usually feel drained from teaching and using all my brain power to discuss each lesson plan. However, that day, I still had enough energy to grade papers without any issues. I sat down at my desk and went into great detail about what each student did wrong and how they could improve. I was able to get through 2 piles of papers instead of my usual half. By now, I would be exhausted and ready to go home. Though this time I didn't have those pessimistic thoughts, and I was more willing to do more work because I was still focused on completing everything for the day. I was managing my workload better than ever, and the flow state mushroom coffee was more effective than drinking regular coffee, especially since it did more than just keep me awake. When I looked at the mushroom research paper again later that day, I realized I had experienced all the effects written there, down to the last detail. Since it worked, that meant there was a different reason the higher-ups decided to not show the public any of the research. I got the feeling that the reason was they wouldn't have enough janitors because more people would be neurosurgeons. That got me thinking. If the study on flow state mushroom coffee was successful, what does that mean for every other study? Edit. The coffee I use is called Clarity Brew. Look it up.